Sarah Thompson, Sarahthomson.
And you're representing the Spears in this?
Yes, I'm the attorney handling the case, partner at Reither Law Group, and counsel for Stephanie Spears. All right, so in these cases, you can only obtain emotional distress damages if you can prove an intentional tort. So an intentional tort would be beyond negligence, beyond a mistake, something like fraudulent concealment, which we are alleging in this particular case, that this doctor lied to our client, the facility lied to our client, stating that he was board certified when he was not. That's concealment. If we can prove that that led to her choosing this veterinarian, which we contend it did, and therefore she had damages resulting from the fact that he was not board certified and not qualified to be performing these procedures, that can help us obtain emotional distress damages. And I actually was.
So for the general public, I think it's important maybe that they know that it's difficult to get emotional damages in this sort of case because why? The dog is considered property,
Right.
not
Exactly.
not a person, so to speak.
Yes. So in order to obtain those emotional distress damages, you have to prove that it was more than just a mistake, which most veterinary cases are a mistake, right? They're an accident. It's not something that's done maliciously or purposefully.
It seems like it's a he said, she said thing on the representation that he was board certified. How do you get around that?
Yes. So when we drafted the complaint, it was a bit of a he said, she said. Since that time, we have received a lot of outreach by individuals who have been similarly affected at this particular facility and employees. And we have testimony from those individuals who will say the same thing happened to them. He was representing that he was a board certified surgeon, or that they were told as employees to represent that. So we have to provide the court with additional witnesses and evidence to help bolster our client's testimony.
You didn't put a dollar amount in this lawsuit, right?
No, we filed in an unlimited jurisdiction, so we're asking for over $35,000. I will say that we sent a demand. The number is over $100,000 because of our client's dog's need for rehabilitative care, physical therapy, and things like that, as well as multiple surgeries. So it's a very large amount compared to most of these cases, and that's in large part, due to the future care needs.
Right. Okay. What's this case going to come down to, do you think?
I think it's going to come down to expert opinions as to the standard of care, as well as having our witnesses who can testify that this is not just a one-time thing, and it's not a he said, she said alone. It's multiple people versus he said.
What do you have to say about the number of other lawsuits, some of them involving Dr. George, some of them not, and the number of other people who have come forward saying they had similar issues with this animal hospital?
So I think that's it's very indicative of how the veterinary community is at this stage. It's become very corporate, and I think that is causing less personal touches and less individual care and kind of that compassion. I think it's a lack of compassion in the community. But as to our case, I think that having multiple other lawsuits and having other individuals coming forward is actually going to help bolster our claim for punitive damages, gross negligence, and disregard of humanity. One of the things we can use to prove that is a pattern of disregard. And so having all these other lawsuits and all these other individuals who've had similarly horrific, unfortunately, experiences helps us in proving our case.
Even if they didn't file lawsuits, they might
Correct.
give you an affidavit, for example.
Correct. Yeah, it'll help. It's again showing that pattern of disregard. Obviously, we're not going to litigate every single claim, but having a lot of people who have had issues, I think, is going to bolster our claim.
Do you have any details of these other cases? What happened in these other cases of owners of animals?
One that I just heard about was an animal who had a surgery by Dr. George, and the animal had recurring infections after the surgery and ended up needing to be put down after a year of going back to the facility and asking for help and getting different antibiotics, and then having to go to another facility. From my experience, having litigated a case very similar to that, there's only a few reasons that dogs get infections like that after surgery, and one of which can be an unsterile environment. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. I don't know, but certainly it's concerning. And the fact that the infections went on for that long is also very concerning because there are cytologies and tests that they can do to obtain the right medication. And I don't know that that happened in that case. So we're looking into that further.
Okay, well, what does the public need to know, about this lawsuit and veterinarians in general?
I think it's very important to do your due diligence before you go to a veterinary office. Look at reviews online. Look at whether or not there have been vet board complaints or discipline as to that veterinarian. You won't see necessarily just complaints, but you can see discipline. You can look up and see whether they've had lawsuits. So I think it's very important to do that due diligence. And I think it's also very important to ensure you are getting the information you need to make a smart decision for your animal as to any treatment plan. So asking for medication information before you let them administer that medication, asking for details about complications and risks of procedures before you allow those procedures to be done on your animal, being able to make an informed and smart decision. And unfortunately, in the current system, it's not always the case that a veterinarian is going to provide that information to you without you asking. It's important that you ask for all of your veterinary records. They don't have an obligation to just send you vet notes after each appointment. So ask for them, ask for the doctor's notes. So you have all of the details about what occurred, if there was a surgery, get all of the anesthetic monitoring records. So you know exactly what happened. And if you need to take your animal to another facility, you have all those details. And just checking before you go to a facility, I think is very important. Certainly, it's a problem for someone to be saying they're board certified when they're not. So as a partial owner or full-time owner of a veterinary hospital, he has an obligation to be ensuring that the hospital is operating ethically. Sure, mistakes happen, but this case in particular is about more than a mistake. It's about a mistake plus concealment regarding what happened to the dog as a result of that mistake, and about misrepresentation regarding certification.
And Dr. George specifically, I didn't find any medical board disciplinary action against him. Have you found any information about him that indicates there's a pattern of this?
Well, the prior clients who are willing to come forward, they are pretty close to exclusively complaints about Dr. George, and similar incidents that happened with him as happened with our client, as well as similar representations that were made about his board certification. Just because you don't have veterinary board discipline doesn't mean that there haven't been veterinary board complaints or inquiries. Those are not publicly available. So unfortunately, we don't know that at this point. It's certainly something we're trying to obtain through discovery, but sometimes veterinarians don't provide that information because they think that it's actually against their ethical obligations in terms of providing confidential information. So we have to actually subpoena the vet board. So it's a little bit more complicated than we would like it to be.
Is this something you specialize in, veterinarian civil action?
Yeah, actually, our law firm is an animal rights law firm. We exclusively practice animal law, and a large majority of our practice is veterinary malpractice cases. We also take cases against groomers, boarding facilities. We help clients with administrative cases where an animal has been labeled as dangerous or, in other words, aggressive, and that animal control wants to euthanize the animal or put restrictions on the animal. We represent rescue groups. So all of the work that we do is animal focused, and a large percentage of that is veterinary malpractice.